he has the music and if he has the sales, it's ultimately Oliver Anthony's brand that is going to dictate whether or not he's a name that is going to fizzle away in the next few months, or if he's a name that is going to continue to penetrate the music industry and pop culture as a whole. I did a few different prompts in Midjourney and tried to come up with something that I felt like checked all of the boxes. So, here's what I would do with Oliver Anthony's brand.
Creative Direction Studio.
Unless you've been clinically dead or living under a rock for the past month, you've probably seen this guy or watched this video. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Oliver Anthony.
Well, hey there.
He popped off the scene a few weeks ago when he released a song called Men North of Richmond. The song was praised by some as an anthem for the working class everyman. It's a pretty sharp take on American bureaucracy, politics, and corrupt government in general.
It was funny seeing it at the presidential debate. Because it's like, I wrote that song about those people.
And like most viral moments, it's gotten a lot of love and a lot of hate. But love it or hate it, it certainly struck a chord with a lot of people. After the viral success, Oliver Anthony has been in a bidding war with a lot of record labels, and he even claimed that he turned down an $8 million offer, which I think is a pretty smart thing, and here's why. Just a few short years ago, all of the major record labels were snatching up TikTok artists left and right. They would sign these artists, develop them for a bit, and then ultimately drop them.
I went through all emotions. I went to hospital for fuck's sake. So that means I must have driven myself insane mentally. Literally, I went through all emotions. So I was thinking, was we not good enough?
It's probably hard to pinpoint exactly what went wrong in these artists' cases. I think with a record label, it's probably one of three things. Either they didn't have the music, or they didn't have the brand, or the record label ultimately wasn't able to convert TikTok followers and TikTok success into sales. And if we're being honest, it's probably that one. Now, Oliver Anthony's case is a little bit different because he certainly has the sales. And he has a lot of songs that are going to resonate with his audience. But what he doesn't have at this point, that I think is super crucial, is the brand. I've said it on this channel before, and I will say it again and again and again. I think the only thing that should take the passenger seat to the music itself is the artist brand. So in my opinion, the one big deciding factor as to whether or not Oliver Anthony is a name that just disappears in the next few months, or is a name that ultimately continues to penetrate the music industry and pop culture as a whole, is really going to be defining what his brand is. So here's what I would do with Oliver Anthony's brand. I would keep things as simple and untouched as possible. I would really lean into his environment, and I'd let every visual reinforce this idea. The greenery around him, the house behind him, his dog, his guitar, the truck that he's in. All of these things are such a big part of who he is right now. I would continue building these as small brand elements aside him. I'd make sure no one touches his wardrobe, his hair, his beard. I would do a photo shoot, just him and I. I wouldn't try to force an aesthetic. I wouldn't try to shoot film in the hopes that we kind of get this retro-y vintage vibe. I would just let everything live kind of how it does. I wouldn't spend a lot of time editing. I wouldn't spend a lot of time processing. I certainly wouldn't spend a lot of time finding the right filters or tones. I would just let everything have this very naturalistic, raw aesthetic to it. In shooting those photos, I would try very hard to make sure that moments are captured and not curated. I wouldn't tell him how to pose, and I wouldn't tell him to look off in the distance. I wouldn't tell him what to wear. I would capture moments and really build a story around those. I'd probably craft a very simple text-based logo, probably using a font that's somewhat familiar, nothing modern or overly unique. I'd carefully lean into the color red, not just for, the beard and the hair, but for this idea of trying to capture themes like passion or anger or love. From what I've seen and heard of him so far, all of those themes feel very appropriate here. I'd use red super sparingly and really only in places where it feels like it mattered or where we're trying to reinforce certain ideas. I'd make sure nothing ever felt too slick or overproduced. For album packaging, I really like the idea of putting him in his environment and really having that be a staple of his brand. But I don't necessarily like the idea of seeing his face on the cover. I did a few different prompts in Midjourney and tried to come up with something that I felt like checked all of the boxes for what I would do with Oliver Anthony's brand. I was ultimately able to produce a photo that I felt like perfectly captured his environment, his genre, and some of the themes that I hear again and again in his music. I didn't want to do a whole lot here, but I did want the highlights to feel a little bit hazier. I did want to add some grain for texture purposes. Played with text being on it, played with text being off of it. I like it without text. I think it makes more of a statement. I think it's a stronger visual. To me, it feels more powerful without the text. So based on the creative direction I would do, this cover really feels like a good balance of simple and authentic, and I feel like visually captures exactly what the music does sonically. In terms of brand, the last thing you really want to do with an artist like Oliver Anthony is pair him with a hotshot photographer and pair him with, top tier stylist and pair him with this creative team around him to really elevate what he's already doing. Now, let me be clear. I think that is a very solid approach for a lot of young up and coming artists. However, when you have somebody like Oliver Anthony who has really gone viral for being authentic and being passionate. So if you take what he's already done and if you try to elevate it and make it sexier or glossier, I think the audience who bought into that originally is going to see right through it, and you are going to diminish the brand right out the gate. So, what would you guys do with Oliver Anthony? How would you build and develop him visually as an artist? Would you take an approach similar to what I would do, which is like build gently from the current foundation, or would you do something totally different? I want to hear about it in the comments. And if you guys are up for the challenge, I would love to see what you would do in Midjourney for Oliver Anthony's album cover. Drop a link in the comments. I want to see exactly what you guys would do, and let's talk about it. Guys, if you enjoyed this content, if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it. Please consider subscribing to my channel. It really helps me grow. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.